Open up for us.
Okay.
All right, just got the alert.
Okay. You want me to just go and get rolling? I don't got it on here yet, but I mean,
Yes, sir.
cool. All right. All right. Shalom. Shalom. Oh, let me put my. All right. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, all honor, and all glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Racha Kodash. Double honors to our apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessing and many salutations unto you elect across the four winds of this earth, fulfilling your lots in all truth and all sincerity. All right. We are the brothers from Great Millstone Dallas camp, have the elder brother Yatazak on the other end, and I'm the priest Sha'ar, and we're coming from the Great Millstone Dallas camp. And we've been doing a series of lessons as for those of you all that are watching these lessons, you'll already know what we're talking about. But as of lately, we've been going into Hebrews, the 11th chapter, because that is a chapter strictly about faith. And it's going into the different accounts of all of our, well, I'll say a number of our forefathers that showed extraordinary faith in Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai to get them out of the situation that they were in, going into trust. And we read these to build us and boost us up so we could have this faith and look back at the things that they've done. That way, when these troublesome times are fully made manifest, because we definitely understand these times are coming and they're right around the corner. When these situations come to us, we can look back at these examples of our fathers and see how they were protected and they were sustained in that day. Okay, so the last lesson that we had done some weeks back was going into our forefather Abraham, and that was a very heavy lesson within itself. And today we're going to touch up on Moses. All right, we skipped past Isaac and Jacob because they're also mentioned in Hebrews 11, but Lord's will, we're going to jump back to them next week. And we're going to go into all of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But today we're going to go on Moses, touch up on his exploits in Egypt, and just go into his faith and why he was chosen by the Heavenly Father. All right, there's some interesting stuff you can find on Moses. All right, especially in the Josephus. And for those of y'all that have Josephus, all right, I would definitely encourage y'all to read along. And if you don't have a Josephus, just hear. All right, because there's a lot of information that comes out on there that's very interesting. Okay, so we're going to start off in the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 23, going into our forefather Moses. And you already know how we do it, Saquon.
Hey, you know what? Before we get started, let's make sure we do actually bring out that warrior aspect of Moses.
God.
Let's make sure we bring it out because you already know the correlation with the king.
Mm-hmm.
So let's make sure we do address that.
That's a bet. We'll do.
All right.
Absolutely.
I got Hebrews for you. I'll read it for you.
Yeah, that's a bet.
This is Hebrews 11 and 23. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents because they saw he was a proper child and they were not afraid of the king's commandment.
Man, and that's very interesting when you look at it. And I actually am going to pull something from the Josephus, even going into that, because when you read it in Exodus, the second chapter, it mentions his mother Yochebed, and it also mentions his father Amram, but it doesn't really talk about his father Amram too much because it mentions his parents right here in Hebrews 11. And when you go even into his father Amram, he was actually a very influential figure to the nation of Israel. All right, and we can read about that in the Josephus. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up the Josephus really quick, got the side, and I'm actually gonna just read up. And for those of y'all that own the Josephus, where I'm at right now are the books of the Antiquities of the Jews, chapter 9, and it says concerning the afflictions that befell upon the Hebrews in Egypt during 400 years. All right, so I'm gonna start reading from the top one there at number 1. Okay, and it says, now it happened that the Egyptians grew delicate and lazy as to painstaking and gave themselves up to other pleasures, and in particularly to the love of gain. They also became very ill affectionate toward the Hebrews, as touched with envy at their posterity. And this is going into that 400-year period when we were in the land of Egypt. All right, the Egyptians grew lazy because when Jake was over there, we was so influential and making things happen. all right, those Egyptians grew lazy. And it's spiritual because we look at Egypt today, America today, and we see that same MO. When you look at these Americans, they're lazy as hell. They're living off the delicacies. All right, like we read it in Matthew 24. They're eating, drinking, and marrying and giving into marriage. It was the same spirit that was taking over the Egyptians before Egypt was subdued, just as we see it over here in America. You got any points, Elder, or anything?
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay, cool. I'm going to continue here in Josephus. For when they saw that the nation of the Israelites flourished and were become eminent, all right, and that word eminent ultimately just goes into, when you look at the word eminent, it goes into like more than just top tier, but like they were owned pretty much. When it came to science, they were brilliant. Okay, it says, and were become eminent already in plenty of wealth, which they had acquired by their virtue and natural love of labor. They thought their increase was to their own detriment, and having in length of time forgotten the benefits they had received from Joseph, particularly the crown being now come into another family, they became very abusive to the Israelites and contrived many ways of afflicting them. Okay, so the saints of the Most High was being wore out around that time, right?
I got a point to make.
Gone.
Now, as we go through Moses, keep in mind that through the Spirit we come in His stead, and I also want y'all through the Spirit to keep in mind that who we were in captivity under then is very similar to who we under captivity now. Romans 9, right? You gonna
That's right.
Lord willing, you gonna see Romans 9 come to life as we go through the story of our forefather Moses, aka all those other times that he came, which the some may come out, some may not. But Moses is very important amongst our other forefathers as we go continue this chapter.
That's right.
Right? But yeah, keep in mind that you could put yourself in Moses' shoes and you could put Esau in the Pharaoh's shoes, and it'll seem just like it's happening to you today.
That's right.
All right, let's go, bro.
God, I'm gonna jump down to chapter 2. I'm gonna just jump down. Okay. It says, while the affairs of the Hebrews were in this condition, a particular occasion offered itself to the Egyptians, which made them more solicitous for the extinction of our nation. One of those sacred scribes, who was very sagacious, and when you go into that word sagacious, it means one of a well-known wise countenance, and it also means one that is full of discernment. All right, so there was a well-known scribe that is mentioning of the Egyptians right here, okay? And it says, in foretelling future events, truly told the king that about this time there would be a child be born to the Israelites, who, if he were reared, would bring the Egyptian dominion low and would raise up the Israelites, that he would excel all men in virtue and obtain a glory that would be remembered through all ages.
Hey, let me stop you real quick.
Please.
When you go into Hebrews, it's 23. It talked about him being a proper child, right? Right. Well, osteos is the word in the Greek, right? It says of polished manners, right? Elegant, comely, fair. You know what I'm saying? He was an Israelite child.
That's right.
See? You remember how they was trying to kill all the Hebrew babies to make sure that he didn't come forth? You see? They did the same thing with Yahweh Shai.
That's it.
You see, Moses is that proper child that they knew that they were gonna have to not let raise up. And it was and just like Captain Yashawamba always say, his parents were in the spirit. You know what I'm saying? Because Moses means what drawn from the waters or something like that.
Yeah, to be drawn. Yep.
They had so much faith. They had so much faith that they just put him as a baby in the water. You know what I'm saying? We those babies in the water. You see, but he ended up being taken care of on the other end when he ended up getting to his destination. But he's that proper child that you're talking about. You got it.
God, that's right. And just as a footnote, because you brought up a good point, there was spirit. It's a spirit. I was going to bring this out too. You brought up the example when Pharaoh wanted to kill all the sons and how it happened in the day of Yahweh Shai. That's also another indicator to show you that Yahweh Shai is the prophet that was likened unto Moses. Because those same things as it happened with Moses in the time, or with the perils and the plight that we was dealing with being Israelites, the same thing happened. All right, when King Herod was king, who was an Edomite. Okay, so when you continue here in Josephus, it says, and would raise up the Israelites, and he would excel all men in virtue and obtain a glory that would be remembered through all ages. And we remember that to this day right now. Whether you believe or whether you don't believe, you can be an atheist and you'll know about the Red Sea split and Moses. All ages are aware of this great salvation that had happened in the days, all right, of Moses and Aaron. Okay. It says, which thing was so feared by the king that according to this man's opinion, he commanded that they should cast every male child which was born to the Israelites into the river and destroy it. So this is what moved Pharaoh to throw all the Israelite sons in the river to be destroyed by this prophecy that this scribe had. All right, and it was the Lord. Really, they can say that their gods put his mind to do that, but really it was a thought that came to his mind by Yahweh Shai. Okay, now I'm gonna jump further to the 3rd chapter because it's gonna go into Moses' father. Now, Moses' father, as it was stated earlier, a lot's not mentioned about Moses' father. We read it in Exodus, the 2nd chapter. It just mentions his name, but he was from a line of nobility, and he had a lot of influence among the Hebrews, tons of influence. He was the leader of the people. Okay, and it's going to go into
proper
it.
Child.
You said what?
Which made him a proper child.
Right. That's right. He came from a noble line. That's right, brother. You know, so I'm going to read this, and I'm going to jump down to the point, because what I'm about to read here, it's an account when Amram fell asleep, and the Lord spoke to Amram while he was asleep. Okay. Now I'm going to read this in chapter 3 in the Antiquities of the Jews. Okay. It says, a man whose name was Amram, one of a nobler sort of the Hebrews, was afraid for his whole nation, lest it should fall by the want of young men to be brought up hereafter, and was very uneasy at it, his wife being with the child, and he knew not what to do. Hereupon he betook himself to pray to the Most High.
You see that? You see that? You see that? He prayed to the Most High. You see, prominent amongst the Hebrews, he prayed to the Most High. Look, Lord, they finna take my son. They finna kill my son. He prayed to the Most High, and what was the end result? Moses was safe. You see, Mashah was safe, but it was they didn't know what was gonna happen. But that was that faith that they had to just put him in that water is that same faith that Peter had when he asked the Lord, "Can I walk on the water to you?"
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as Peter started to slip, it says immediately the Lord grabbed him up.
Right.
Same thing with Moses. They
had
the faith enough to put him in that water. You had to have the faith to even do that. Their prayer was answered. Right? Let's go.
That's right. That's right. It says, hereupon he betook himself to pray to the Most High, and entreated him to have compassion on those men who had no wise transgressed the laws of his worship, and to afford them deliverance from the miseries they had at that time endured, and to render abortive their enemies hope of the destruction of their nation. Accordingly, the Most High had mercy on him and was moved by his supplication. So he had heard the prayer of Amram. Okay. And it says he stood by him in his sleep. Okay. It says, and exhorted him not to despair of his future.
So you say read that last part about stood by him while he was asleep.
God, it says he stood by him in his sleep and exhorted him.
I'm gonna get Job 33 real quick.
Yeah, that's a bet. That's a bet.
All right, go ahead and read it.
Yeah, come. It says he stood by him in his sleep and exhorted him not to despair of his future favorites. You want me to keep reading, or?
No. I'm gonna go ahead and this is Job 33:14. It says, "For the Most High speaketh once, yea twice, yet man perceiveth it not. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falleth upon men, and the slumber is upon the bed, Then he openeth the ears of men and sealeth their instruction, that he may withdraw man from his purpose and hide pride from men. Right?
Mhm.
So basically, he prayed to the Heavenly Father. The Heavenly Father, his goings were of the Lord. So therefore, that faith led him to put Moses in the water, knowing that he was going to be okay because the Lord visited him. You see, the Lord visited him. When you sleep, that's when the Lord sees your instructions. We just read it.
Mhm.
You see, so he let him. Hey, this is what we gonna do. And he didn't blink. You know what I'm saying? He wrapped the baby up to make sure he was gonna be warm, and the rest was he left it in the Lord's hands.
That's
You
right.
see, and that's what's going on with us, man. We've been those babies that's just we floating through the water, but we gonna come out on the other end. You know what I'm saying?
That's
Through
right.
the,
That's
through the
right.
spirit. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Let's go. You got it.
Yeah, real quick precept actually just came to mind. I just had my sword. But when you read it in Hebrews the 11th chapter, I got to say it right here. I'm tripping. When you read it in Hebrews the 11th chapter, I got a quick precept real quick going into Abraham, but it's going into what you're talking about how it falls with us and with Moses, how he was just led through the Spirit. But this is the book of Hebrews chapter 11, verse 8. And it says, by faith, Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he had received for an inheritance and obeyed, he went out not knowing whither he went.
Yep.
Okay. So the Lord led Abraham to the land of Canaan, just like the Lord led Moses down the Nile River into the palace, just like the Lord is leading us and our sojourning as we're here. Our story is more similar to Moses' story than we can realize.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now I'm going to jump back to this here in the writings of Flavius Josephus, unless you had a point, Elder.
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay. So continuing on, it says, he stood by him in his sleep and exhorting him not to despair of his future favorites. He said further, and this is now we're going into what the Lord is commanding Amram, okay, while he was sleeping upon his bed. It says he did not forget their piety towards them, and would always reward them for it, as he had formerly granted his favor to their forefathers, and made them increase from a few to so great a multitude. He put him in mind that when Abraham was come alone out of Mesopotamia unto Canaan, just like the precept that was read in Hebrews 11 and 8, he brought that to remembrance that, look, it says, I led Moses to the land of Canaan. I'm also going to lead y'all as a people. Okay? It says he had been made happy, not only in other respects, but that when his wife was at first barren, she was afterwards by him enabled to conceive seed and bear him sons, that he left to Ishmael and to his posterity the country of Arabia, as also to his sons by Keturah, Troglodyus, and to Isaac Canaan. By my assistance, said he. He did great exploits in war, and it's talking about Abraham. He did great exploits in war, which unless you be yourselves impious, you must still remember. As for Jacob, he became well known to strangers also, by the greatness of that prosperity in which he lived, and left to his sons, which came into Egypt with no more than 70 souls, while you are now become above 600,000. Know therefore that I shall provide you for all, Salakia, I shall provide for you all in common what is for your good, and particularly for thyself, which shall make thee famous. For that child, out of dread of whose nativity the Egyptians have doomed the Israelite children to destruction, shall be this child of thine. So he's telling Amram, the child that those Egyptians prophesied that was going to come and subdue the nation, that was going to come out of your bowels. All right, very similar. It makes me think of when Gabriel had spoke to Mary. All right, and told Mary and spoke to Joseph as well.
That's right.
All right, and let them know about a child that was going to be born. Okay, who was going to sit on the throne. This is a prophet that is like an unto Moses right here. So it's a very similar scenario happening. What happened with Moses and what happened to our Lord Yahweh Shai when they were being brought up and born. Okay, so when you continue, it says, Shalaki, I'm trying to find where I left off at. Oh yeah, here we go, right here. It says, shall be this child of thine, and shall be concealed from those who watch to destroy him. And when he is brought up in a surprising way, he shall deliver the Hebrew nation from the distress they are under from the Egyptians. His memory shall be famous while the world lasts. And this,
and that's why we reading about him in Hebrews chapter 11.
right.
You see, his faith is documented in our history, and we actually getting into that history. You know what I'm saying? And that faith don't just come from nowhere. You know what I'm saying? When you talk about how Moses was born and the situation that was going on with that, Moses was a soldier. He was a man of war. You see, you don't fight battles and go through all that and slay men without the spirit of the Lord on you. You know what I'm saying? And he was built into the leader that he became through the spirit. You know, through though his spirit was being built up, his physical stature was being built up too. You know, Moses lived a life. You know,
right.
You got it.
Right. Continuing on, it says, his memory shall be famous while the world lasts. And this not only among the Hebrews, but foreigners also. Everybody talks about Moses to this day. All right, you look at all these different nations. Look at Islam. They talk about Moses. Look at Christianity, which is BS. But they talk about Moses. Judaism, those gutter rats over there in the Holy Land right now, they talk about Moses. Okay? Everybody knows about Moses, whether you're atheist, agnostic, or whether you are a true believer. Right. All right, that fame that happened in ancient Egypt spread forth to every nation. You can be a Gook, a Moabite, or an Ammonite over there in that land, and they're gonna know about Moses. Okay. Now, continuing on, it says, all which shall be the effect of my favor to thee and to thy posterity. He shall also have such a brother, and he shall himself obtain my priesthood, and his posterity shall have it after him to the end of the world. Okay, so not only is it talking about Moses right here, but it's talking about Aaron as well. Let them know that these two children that were going to come afterward were going to have very heavy influence in the future of the world and what was going to take place. All right, we're sitting here right now due to what had taken place back then. Okay, Yahweh Shai was born and lived his life, walked his walk, and the only way that was able to be done was through the mercies of the Lord, having this situation come to pass right here. Okay, and when you further read it in the Josephus, as you had made statement of it goes into how they came up with the decision to put him in the basket. All right, it says they made the basket out of bulrushes, they pitched it with slime, and they sent it right down the river, and it appeared right there in the palace of Pharaoh, where his daughter picked him up. We can read. We all know about that account. All right, it's in Exodus, the 2nd chapter. Okay, but jumping forward, unless you got any points.
Oh no, let's go. Let's roll.
I'm going to jump to chapter 6. All right, and I'm going to start from the top. It says, hereupon, and as we said, it's going to be quite a bit of the Josephus that's read, y'all. Okay, it's going to be quite a bit of the Josephus that's going to be read here.
And what you do, and what you can do is what you know in the scriptures already. What you know in the scriptures already, go back over that. You know what I'm saying? Because that's one we always talk about, that when it comes to your ministry and what's written about you, it's not gonna have everything. It's gonna have your portion of the ministry. You see, Moses didn't get into the ministry until later in his life. You see, he was still built up as a Hebrew, built up as a proper child and grew to a proper man, and then he came into the truth, just like you did.
That's right.
See, Moses came into the truth. See? And from the time he came into the truth until the time he went back to the spirit world, he was a man on a mission for Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. Same way you are. You see? And it's gonna be certain details of your life that's not gonna be written about unless it's an in-depth type of situation.
Absolutely.
The Josephus is documented writings that add to the scriptures for those that want to know more.
That's right.
And of course, through the spirit, you pick out the bones and all those different things, but you want to know these things. Bro, this is our forefather. It's just like reading about your uncle. It's like reading about your brother. It's like reading about your granddad. You know what I'm saying? You got it.
That's right. That's right. This is chapter 6 now. Jumping to this chapter. It says, hereupon, it was that Thermuthis, and Thermuthis was the daughter of Pharaoh, okay, that found Moses and drew him out of the water. Okay. Hereupon it was that Thermuthis imposed this name Mouses. All right, it says Mouses upon him from what happened when he was put into the river. For the Egyptians called water by the name of Mau, and such as are saved out of it by the name of Esses. So they putting these two words together, they imposed this name upon him. And he was, by the confession of all, according to the Most High's prediction, as well as his greatness of mind, as for his contempt of difficulties, the best of all the Hebrews. For Abraham was his ancestor of the seventh generation. For Moses was the son of Amram, who was the son of Kath, whose father Levi was the son of Jacob, who was the son of Isaac, who was the son of Abraham. Now Moses' understanding, and this is going into what you would expound on beautifully, going into him being weaned and brought up as a prophet child. Okay, because you read about it when you even read it in the scriptures, going into the account of it. All right, the daughter of Pharaoh wanted to nurse Moses when he came out of the water, but he rejected her breast. All right, but Miriam, who stood afar off, watched it and actually approached her and said, "This Hebrew child needs a Hebrew breast to suck on." So the Heavenly Father still put away to the point where she went to her mother, and her mother became one of the nursing mothers for Moses, not even knowing that this was the mother of Moses. Those Egyptians didn't know that Yoheved was Moses' mom, but the Heavenly Father had that set up and arranged it. All right, and immediately when his mother came to him, he started drinking the milk immediately. And Yasuamba goes into this very often. All right, even when you look at society today, like, the children today are on that formula. All right, they're heavily encouraged, or even the women of our nation are encouraged not to breastfeed because they're worried about their look and such. But when you do that, you're getting tied to your culture and your history, man. So it makes a lot of sense why Moses grew in such a way and came up in such a way, because he was still tied to his heritage, man. All right. When he continued, it says, now Moses' understanding became superior to his age, nay, far beyond understanding. And when he was taught, he discovered greater quickness of apprehension than was usual at his age.
Bruh,
Yeah,
wasn't that Yahweh Shai on point at 12?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying. It's the same concept.
Right.
You see? It's the same concept, man. When the Lord got the spirit on you to do certain things, you shine.
Yep.
You see? The spirit of the Lord was on Moses. Go ahead.
God, that's right, bro. It says, and his actions at that time promised greater when he should be, Shalaki, when he should come to the age of a man. The Most High did also give him that tallness when he was but 3 years old, as was wonderful. Okay, so Moses was tall too. Even as 3 years old, he was a tall little boy, but that stature represented something. All right. Now I'm going to jump over to chapter 7. Okay. And it says, Darmuthis, therefore, perceiving him to be so remarkable of a child, adopted him for her son, having no child of her own. And when one time she had carried Moses to her father, she showed him to him. And she said, Salaki, and said she thought to make him her father's successor. So what does that mean? Moses was being prepped and groomed to not only be a prince of Egypt, but be the next Pharaoh. All right. That's why it's such a big deal. And I got a quick precept actually in the book of Acts 7. There's a precept that just came to mind. And this is our forefather Stephen giving the accounts. And this is talking about Moses here, right? So when you read this here, I want to go to a good point. Here it is. It is right here. All right. This is the book of Acts chapter 7, verse 20. And it reads, in which time Moses was born and was exceeding fair and nourished up in his father's house 3 months. And when he was cast out, Pharaoh's daughter took him up and nourished him for her own son. And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and in deeds. And he was come a full 40 years old it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel. But the
That's what I'm
point in
saying.
verse,
You
Mhm.
you was reading about his reputation up until he got to 40 years old.
Yep,
Right? Go read that last precept again, leading up until he came into the truth.
absolutely.
Like I'm
Acts
saying,
7.
it was because you mentioned earlier the Lord's prediction regarding Moses to his father.
That's right.
You seeing him being built up into that. You know what I'm saying? He was already a grown man when he came into the truth.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't grow up as no nigga. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
That's right.
He was groomed to be what he was.
That's right. That's right. Moses was extremely sophisticated.
Right.
Okay. He was very sophisticated. He was a leader. You got to think about it. Not you. I'm talking about just the audience, just in general. You got to think about it. He was being prepped up to be the king, to be a king, to be a pharaoh.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a different way you're groomed up. He wasn't groomed up in no normal way. Okay. It says in verse 22 in Acts 7, and Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and in deeds. And it says it very faint right here in verse 22, but as you had stated, we're going into the history of how he was not only mighty in words, but also in deeds. Because you mentioned the wars as well, going into the wars, and we're going to touch upon that as well. All right. Moses had the juice. All right.
Right.
In a nutshell, Moses, he was the man. Okay. He was admired by not only the Hebrews, because best believe there was a reputation that was floating around the Hebrews in-house that he was the one that was going to deliver them. Okay. And among the Egyptians, he had so much notoriety. He was the son of Pharaoh. It was like, yo, this man got it. This is the next king right here. All right. So in both worlds, he had high status and high notoriety.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm jumping back to Josephus. It says, and said, so like I'm gonna just start at a good point. And when one time she had carried Moses to her father, she showed him to him. And it's gonna get very interesting right here, man. An omen for your ass. Okay. It says she said she thought to make him her father's successor. If it should please the Most High, all right, or please their God, all right, if it should please God, she should have no legitimate child of her own. So she was so into Moses, she sacrificed having a child from her own womb and said, look, I'm going to spend this time raising him up because he's going to be the successor. Okay. And said unto him, I have brought up a child who was of a divine form and of a generous mind. And as I have received him from the bounty of the river in a wonderful manner, I thought proper to adopt him for my son in the heir of thy kingdom. You see how cold the Most High is, how he does things, man? That act of faith, that was a very bold move for Amram and Yocheved to come up to the spiritual decision, with the spiritual decision, to put a basket, an ark together and float him down the Nile River with crocodiles, all right? All types of danger. This is a newborn baby, 3 months old, all right? That took a lot of faith. They actually took it there, man. Okay, you look at it today, all right, a lot of people wouldn't be willing to take it there, but those that are the elect right now have to have that exceptional level of faith to be able to take it there to that level, because that's when miracles happen. That was a miracle right there, man.
Oh yeah.
You want to call a spade a spade. This was a full-blown miracle, okay? When you continue, it says, and when she had said this, she put the infant in her father's hand. So he took him and hugged him close to his breast. And on his daughter's account, so Pharaoh took the baby, was like, oh, this is my little guy right here. You know, the same Pharaoh that put the decree out to kill all those Hebrew children. But this one Hebrew child, the spirit of compassion was put upon him to show mercy. Okay? When you continue, it says, in a pleasant way, all right? So this is going into Moses. It says, in a pleasant way, the Pharaoh put his diadem upon his head. He put his diadem, which is an ancient headwear that was worn.
I'll
The
be right back.
Egyptians wore, yeah, come on. The Egyptians wore, but we also wore. All right? A diadem is more so like a mitre. For those of y'all that want understanding of what a diadem is, it's a head wrap. All right? And there was a lot of ancient Eastern cultures that would wear that on their heads. All right? Not only just us. So it says, in a pleasing way, put his diadem upon Moses' head, but Moses threw it down to the ground And in a puerile mood, he read it around. And when you go into that word puerile, it means in a very childish, being funny type of way. So Moses, a baby, the Pharaoh put the diadem on Moses' head. Moses took it off, started swinging it around, threw it to the ground, started stomping on it, playing on it and everything. You can imagine a child. All right, that was a very childish thing to do, but it meant something. All right, it meant a lot, and that represented the kingdom of Egypt being thrown down by the hands of Moses. Well, really by the hands of Yahweh Shem Yahushai, but Moses being the catalyst that was used to do that. Okay, and it's going to mention it right here. It says, in a pure mood, he wreathed it around and trotted with his feet, which seemed to bring along with it an evil presage, concerning the kingdom of Egypt. But when the sacred scribe saw this, parentheses, he was the same person who foretold that the nativity would bring the dominion of that kingdom low. So when Moses as a child was doing that, that same scribe that was read about earlier, having that vision that the Egyptians were going to be subdued by a particular Israelite man, immediately when Moses as a child took that diadem off, swung it around and threw it to the ground and started playing and stomping on top of it, that scribe remembered right there about what happened prior to that. And he knew immediately that this was the child right here that was going to grow up and throw the Egyptians down and subdue the Egyptians. Okay? And it's going to go on to say it. It says, he made a violent attempt to kill him. And crying out in a frightful manner, he said, this, O king, this child is he of whom God foretold, that if we kill him, we shall be in no danger. He himself affords I believe that word is attestation to the prediction of the same thing by his trampling upon thy government and treading upon thy diadem. Take him therefore out of the way and deliver him, the Egyptians, from the fear they are in about him, and deprive the Hebrews of the hope they have of being encouraged by him. So he was moved to say, kill this kid, man. We need to kill him right now or else we through. That's what that wise scribe that was mentioned earlier stated when he saw that account of Moses throw down the diadem of Pharaoh. Okay? And it says, but Thermuthis prevented him and snatched the child away. And the king was not hasty to slay him. God himself, whose providence protected Moses, inclining the king to spare him. He was therefore educated with great care, so the Hebrews depended on him and were good hopes that great things would be done by him. And that makes me think of it in Proverbs 21, where it says, the heart of the king is in the hand of the Lord, and he moveth it whithersoever he sees fit. All right? So it was obvious that this was going to be the man that was going to subdue the Egyptians, because this same man that had the prediction earlier was the reason why all those Egyptian children were slain. So it was a big deal that Pharaoh was moved not to slay him, but he killed all them babies back then. But at that moment, he was moved to have compassion on his child, because it shows you the Heavenly Father's in full control. And just as we're reading about this back then, you look at it today, the Most High is in full control. We're going to eat. We're going to be okay. You're going to be taken care of. All right? And even with these mandates and these decrees that are getting put out here,
bro, Planned Parenthood is today's version of killing all the Hebrew babies.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They did it with Moses, they did it with Yahweh Shai, then they did it with the prophets coming back. You see, the Planned Parenthood was to get rid of the prophets, because at the end they talk about the Lord raising up his prophets in the last days. You see, those two witnesses against them. You know, the prophet, I would say the law and the prophets, man. Moses is a part of that, man.
Right.
You know, you got it.
That's right. And the brother actually posted a precept going into that. This is Yaharo's Judah Israel, Luke 16:31. And he said unto him, if they hear not Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded who one rose from the dead. But going into the point, he mentions Moses and the prophets back then, just as you did. Okay? That was an account that was well known. Okay? Continuing into Josephus, it says, but let's see here. It says he was educated, therefore, with great care. So the Hebrews depended on him and were of good hopes that great things would be done by him. But the Egyptians were suspicious of what would follow such his education. Yet because if Moses had been slain, there was no one. And it's another indicator to show you that he was prepped up to be king. Because this was their thought process. If Moses had been slain, there was no one, either akin or adopted, that had any oracle on his side. So it shows you back then that when a king or a pharaoh was brought up, there had to be an oracle that was brought up to make him the king. So around this time, there was no Egyptian, nor no adopted son, that there was an oracle that was given of somebody being raised up to be the king or the pharaoh of Egypt. So by default, Moses was that guy, and they knew that. So they was betwixt two of killing him. But if they killed him, who was going to be the next heir to be the pharaoh? Okay. So it says, if Moses had been slain, there was no one, neither akin or adopted, that had any oracle on his side, for pretending to the crown of Egypt, and likely to be of a greater advantage of them, they abstained from killing him. That's a bad story right there of his nativity, man. There's nothing that they could do. The Heavenly Father had said in their mind, this man might be the guy to kill us, but what else could we do right now? But just educate him and bring him up in the way. That's a heck of a way of protection right there, man.
Yep.
That's a heck of protection.
The Lord was hid amongst the Egyptians.
Right. That's right. Absolutely, man.
Yeah, man.
And it makes me think of today. All right, we out here in America letting the behinds know what's getting ready to happen. And we know an insurrection is coming, but as long as the apostles, elders, all the way on down to us, been out here doing this, there ain't nothing that Esau could do.
We hide amongst the Egyptians. We hidden amongst the Egyptians now. Yep.
That's right. That's right, bro. So it's a lot of history, interesting history going up into Moses and his nativity. Thus is why we had read Hebrews chapter 11, verse 23 going into it. Okay. Now you said you wanted to go into the wars, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So this is going into the account of the wars that had taken place with the Ethiopians. And it's a lot going into the wars. So, I mean, we can kind of jump around if you're down.
Yeah, I just want to put you in the mind frame of Moses and his wars and David and the Philistines.
Gone.
I want to say then you'll see why Peter had the precision to chop a nigga's ear off on the fly like that.
That's right.
Wait, just to stir up your pure minds,
Right.
So whatever you see fit to bring out, the spirit gonna roll.
Gone. That's right. This is back in the book of the writings of Flavius Josephus, and this is chapter 10. And the title of it says how Moses made war with the Ethiopians. It says in the first part, Moses, therefore, when he was born and brought up in the foregoing manner, and came to the age of maturity, made his virtue manifest to the Egyptians, and showed that he was born for the bringing them down and raising the Israelites. And the occasion he laid hold of was this: the Ethiopians, who are next door neighbors to the Egyptians, made an inroad into their country, which they seized upon and carried off the effects of the Egyptians, who in their rage fought against them, and revenged the affronts they had received of them. But being overcome in battle, some of them were slain, and the rest ran away in a shameful manner, and by the means saved themselves. So this is going into the battles that they had with those Ethiopians. Those Ethiopians got in their behind. All right, they was whooping on them Egyptians. The Egyptians was in straits around this period of time. Okay. Now when he jumped down, it says, whereupon the Ethiopians followed after them in the pursuit, and thinking that it would be but a mark of cowardice if they did not subdue all Egypt, they went on to subdue the rest with greater vehemence. And when they had tasted the sweets of the country, they never left off the prosecution of the war. And as the nearest parts had not courage enough at first to fight with them, they proceeded as far as Memphis. In the sea itself, while not one of the cities was able to oppose them, the Egyptians under this sad oppression betook themselves to their oracles and prophecies. And when the Most High had given them this counsel to make use of Moses the Hebrew and take his assistance, the king commanded his daughter to produce him, that he might be the general of their army. Upon which, when she had made him swear that he would do him no harm, she delivered him to the king, and supposed his assistance would be of great advantage to them, she withal reproached the priests who, when they had before admonished the Egyptians to kill him, was not ashamed now to own their want of his help. All right, so that's going into the part of how Moses was such of a high notoriety, and it showed he was a man of war, that they actually pulled Moses out from where he was to be not only a soldier of the military, but to be the general. Now, when you look at the general is pretty much the highest or one of the highest positions that one can have as pertaining to an army. All right. And that was in Moses' hand right there, man. And when you read about it, that's pretty much it on that too. Zach is going to just go into certain battles and everything.
And that's the point. The point was the warrior that Moses was.
Right.
You see, the warrior that Moses was is bro. How do you think Moses had to be a pretty commanding guy,
right?
You know what I'm saying? To lead, bro, he had all 12 tribes up under him. He had all 12 tribes up under him. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
Handling it. You know, then once once Jethro got a hold of him, you know what I'm saying? Jethro knew how to approach Moses and what he needed. That was a spiritual conversation.
That's right. That's right.
You see, but Moses was a warrior king, same as David, a warrior king. You see, a man after the Most High's heart. It said Moses. He talked to Moses face to face. It said David is a man after his own heart.
Mm-hmm.
You see. So when you read about the faith of those men, when you read about the faith of those men, you see how the Lord deals with a man with that type of faith.
That's right.
That's why he in the faith chapter. It mentions David later on in Hebrews chapter 11.
Yep.
You see,
mm-hmm.
and that'll be a whole nother list of precepts and accounts going into another one of our forefathers with that type of faith.
That's right.
You know,
beautiful.
You got any other precepts you want to pull?
Yeah. I'm just back in Hebrews 11.
Yeah. Let's I'll pull it back up.
And also in Exodus 2, just even going to the account when he went to Sinai the first time and went to the burning bush.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. What verse?
Back in verse Hebrews 11, back in verse 23.
All right. Hebrews 11 and 23. It says, "By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment. By faith, Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of the Most High than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season."
Man, and that's heavy because that's a bold statement in verse 24, refusing to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He is pretty much saying refusing to be the next Pharaoh, because we just went into all the history of Moses, a large chunk of the history of Moses and his nativity in the land of Egypt, and how he was the successor of the Pharaoh. He was being prepped and groomed. He was a general of the army. He had his life in Egypt, and he denied all of that to suffer affliction with his people. And that's why he's mentioned, out of many reasons why, obviously, but I can see that being one of the reasons why this is mentioned in Hebrews 11 going into the faith of Moses, because he denied an empire. He denied himself, you know, just as we have to deny ourselves being in this thing. You got a lot of brothers that had futures and careers in America, but they put that on the back burner because they understand the bigger picture of what's to come, just like our father Moses.
Bro, Yahushua was about to be grabbed up, put on trial, and crucified.
That's right.
And manned up. He denied himself big time, because he could have easily been made king. You know, he could have easily been made king, but he denied himself in order to make that sacrifice for us.
That's right.
You got it.
That's right, man. It makes me think about that account, bro. When Yahushua was fasting in the wilderness for those 40 days, and when Pharaoh came to him, tempting him. One of those occasions was that Satan was like, "Look, you can have all the kingdoms of this world if you just bow to me."
Right.
You know, and Yahushua rejected that. Very similar to Moses right here. Moses could have had all those kingdoms, you know, but he would have to bow down to those Egyptian gods.
Right.
Okay, he would have to, you know what I'm saying? It was an Egyptian way that he would have to follow and do, but he denied that because he kept the main thing, and he understood it. Okay, when you watch that BS Moses movie, that with what was that, Christian Bell?
Right.
That is a horrible account of what the scriptures actually say, man. When you look at that movie, he was an atheist in the movie and this, that, and the third. No, man, he believed. Even before he went to Jethro, he believed. He was brought up in the ways of the Hebrews because his mom taught him when he was a child.
Yep.
But fast forward, I got that account in Exodus, the 2nd chapter, pulled up just when he was in the flocks of, taking care of Jethro's flocks, And we actually mentioned this in the class we did last Saturday, that Yashawambo held going into, and you keep mentioning it as well, in reincarnation, how David, when he was brought up, he kept the sheep. Jacob kept the sheep. Abel kept the sheep. Okay. Moses was a keeper of the sheep.
Yep.
Okay.
Peter was told to keep the sheep.
Peter was told to keep the sheep. That's right, bro. Facts. This is Exodus chapter 3, starting from the top. It says, now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock of he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of the Most High, even unto Horeb. You see the significance within that? You see what the Lord did? All right. Moses was tending to the sheep, and he led the flock of sheep unto Horeb. And what did that represent spiritually? How Moses was going to be the leader that was going to lead the flock over to Sinai, where they were going to receive the law. Mm-hmm. Okay. When you continue, it says, and the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. This is a miracle right here, man. All that we read about, how that conversation happened with the Most High and Amram, and what was going to take place when Moses was young, led up all the way to this moment right here when Moses received instruction on his purpose. All right, on the purpose of why he was raised up and why he was delivered why he was drawn out of the water and brought up and protected in the way that he was. This is Moses receiving his purpose spiritually. All right, just as how we all woke up to the truth in whatever way or accounts had happened with us when we understood our purpose for the Heavenly Father. This is Moses, like, waking up to his purpose. Okay. And it says, and when the Lord saw that, he turned aside to see, the Most High called unto him out of the midst of the bush. He said, Moses, Moses. And he said, here I am. And he said, draw not nigh hither, put off thy shoes from thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. Moreover he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon the Most High. And that right there is humility within itself, man. That shows you how much he cared, that he hid his face. Okay? Man, and that's actually the same thing that Elijah did when Elijah went up to Mount Horeb. All right? When the Spirit of the Lord revealed himself unto Elijah, Elijah also hid his face and put his face between his knees and went into a fetal position. Showed how much they care, and it also showed that they feared the Lord. Okay? And there's a little more to it. I mean, it ain't really too many precepts. We're just going we're just going into the history, brothers. It says in verse 6, moreover, he said, I am Yahweh. I'm the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon him. And Yahweh said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people, which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. It's the same thing he was telling to Amram, his father. Same thing he was telling to Amram, his father. Look, I know I've been heard your prayers. I know what's been happening, but it's going to be okay, because y'all are going to be delivered out of it. And just as that had taken place back then, the Lord had put the Spirit on these men, starting with Elder Abba Bivens, King Marshall, High Priest Ariah, the apostles, all the way down to us today. We're delivering this message unto y'all, letting y'all know a great deliverance is going to take place. All right, he's hearing our sighs and our cries, and we getting ready to be delivered out of Egypt, just how it was back then. We spiritually represent Moses and Aaron today, as that had taken place. We spiritually represent those two prophets back then and today. Okay, you got any points or anything?
That's it. Yeah, that's it. I think
Okay.
I think we made the point.
Con, that's a bet. That's a bet. Hey, for those of y'all that are listening, saying, Lord's willing, it came together to y'all. I believe it did. But the purpose of this was to go into the faith of Moses, but also bring up the history of Moses and why it was such significance of him denying Egypt to suffer affliction with his people. All right? Because as Moses denied the world, he put the world to the side. We're doing the same thing spiritually. All right, and it takes a lot of faith to do that. That's why it's only a small number of individuals that have chosen to do that versus millions of Israelites that are out here still enjoying the pleasures of this life. That's decaying and lying waste anyway. Okay, so you got it, Jaquan. That was all I had, bro.
Hey, God, hey, Lord willing, that was edifying, like the brother said. Hey, with that, we want to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, double honors to the apostles and elders at Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the Akim teaching by Time Muhammad as in sincerity and truth. Shalom.
Shalom.